So we're going to be looking at the page 353, numbers 9 through 25, odds homework review. This is on the percent proportion. And again, from yesterday's lesson, the big thing that we have to remember is the setup of how we create this percent proportion. We know it's a proportion, so we know it's two ratios set equal to each other. We're talking about percent, so I know all percents are out of 100. Now as I go to set this up, this is my whole percent here. So the part of the percent that I'm looking at is there. Now that percent could be less than 100, it could be more than 100, but a percent, no matter what, is always out of that 100. Now if we think again about what this side represents, we're looking at the idea that 100% is all of it. That is my whole amount. So on this side, we match that up. The whole is 100%. That means that the part is my percent that is going to be out of that 100. Part over whole equals percent over 100. Question 9 says $3 is what percent of $40? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my basic template. I know every single time it's going to look like this. And I read back through. $3 is what percent? Well, right there I know I'm looking for my percent of 40. 3 of 40. 3 of 40. $3 is my part, $40 is a whole, and I'm looking for my percent. I'm going to do my cross products. 3 times 100 equals 40x. 3 times 100 is 300 equals 40x. No math left on the left side to do. There's no math left on the right side, so now I need to look across the equal sign. Since 40 is multiplying x, I divide both sides by 40, and I get 7.5 equals x. Number 11 is 12% of 72 is what number? Again, I set up my template. 12%. Percent's typically the easiest one to find because it's either going to have that word percent in the question, or it's going to give me a number with a percent sign. So now I have to figure out 12% of 72. Well, think about how we would read this. This is 12 of 100%. So the 12% of 72 is what number? Go right back to my cross products. 100x equals 72 times 12. Be sure, even though when I look at that cross product, I see x and then 100, the variable always goes after our value, our coefficient. So 100x equals 864. When I divide by 100, I get x equals 8.64. 8 and 64 hundredths, but the directions told me to round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So I end up with 8.6 for a final answer. The 4 tells me to keep my 6 a 6. It does not tell me to round it up to a 7. Number 13, 75 is 20% of what number? Again, I quickly see the 20%. Notice I do not write a percent sign there. That's because we're already representing that percent by placing it over the 100. 75 is 20%. That's telling me that those two are equal. 75 is 20%, so I know my 75 is my part, and I'm looking for the whole number. I do my cross products. 75 times 100 is 7,500 equals 20x. I divide each side by 20, and I end up with 375 equals x. Now with the word problems, we got to think about what's going on here. Lisa and Michelle scored 48% of their team's points. If their team, keyword right there, had a total of 50 points, how many points did they score? Even though it's a word problem, my basic template is the exact same. I'm not going to change anything to that. I just need to be able to pull the information out. I know I have this 48%, I know I have this 50, and I'm looking for the points they scored. So even if I think about what this means, so Lisa and Michelle scored 48%. That's 48 out of the 100%. If their team scored 50, their team is the total, the whole. And I can even see that word total there. But there's a difference between that idea of the team and them. So now I want to know how many points they scored. Well, they scored some amount of points out of that 50. That some amount of points is 48% of the 50. Right now, what we need to be doing is using that estimating idea. 48% is roughly 50%. 50% of 50 is going to be 25. So I should know that my answer's going to be a little bit less than 25 because 48 is a little bit less than 50%. I do my cross products. 100x equals 2400. I divide each side by 100, and x equals 24. So this tells me that Lisa and Michelle scored 24 points. Our next problem. Of the 60 books on the bookshelf, 24 are nonfiction. What percent of the books are nonfiction? Well, by reading, I already know I'm looking for the percent. So now, of the 60 books, so out of all 60 books, 24 are nonfiction. Out of 60 books, 24 of them. So my whole is 60, my part is 24. So now I'm going to do my cross products, and I have 24 times 100 equals 60x. 24 times 100 is 2400 equals 60x. I'm going to divide each side by 60. And I end up with 40 equals x. 40 equals x. So what does that tell me on this? So of the 60 books on the bookshelf, 24 nonfiction. So this tells me that 40% are non-fiction. 40% are nonfiction. These problems are exactly the same as what we saw at the very beginning, except now, if necessary, we need to round to the nearest hundredth. So, same format. Set up my template. What number is 8.2% of 50? So I have my 8.2% here. And now I have to think, what number is this percent of 50? Well, this is 8.2 of 100, so there's my 50. I'm looking for my part. Set up my cross products. 100x equals 50 times 8.2. 100x equals 410. Divide by 100, and x equals 4.1. I only have a value to the 10th, and it says round to the nearest hundredth if necessary, so I have my final answer. In number 21, we see 12.5% of what number is 24? So again, template, I see I have my percent of what number? 12.5. If we take this part out, that prepositional phrase, I have 12.5% is 24. 12.5% is 24, so I'm looking for my whole here. 24 times 100 equals 12.5 times x. This is again going to be 2400 equals 12.5x. I'm going to divide each side by 12.5, and I end up with 192 equals x. 192 equals x. Number 23, we're looking at what percent, right there, automatically know I'm looking for my percent, of 300 is 0.6. What percent is 0.6? 0.6 of 300 is what percent? If you need to restructure the wording in there to make it make a little bit more sense, do that. So we set up our cross products. 0.6 times 100, or 6/10 times 100, equals 300x. This is going to equal 60 equals 300x. I'm going to divide each side by 300. 60 divided by 300 is going to be 0.2, or 2/10, equals x. I really like this problem because a lot of times students will stop before they've answered the full question. So you have to be careful. You have to be paying attention to those details in the question. So it says that we save 40% on allowance each week. If you save $16 in 5 weeks, how much money is received each week? So again, just because it's a word problem doesn't change our setup. We have our 40% of the allowances saved each week. Save $16 in 5 weeks. Well, we know that they're saving 40%, so the 16 is how much was saved. We're looking for the total amount here. We set up our cross products. 16 times 100 equals 40x. This is going to be 1600 equals 40x. Divide each side by 40, and we get 40 for an answer. Now the tricky part here is this 40 represents how much allowance was made in 5 weeks, but we want to know how much is it each week. So we had $40 in 5 weeks. This tells me that $8 each week. So this tells me how much was made each week after I divide the $40 by the number of weeks that was earned, which was 5, and I get a total of $8 each week.